Good evening, everybody, and a very warm welcome to all of you on behalf of NECAFLA, the Center for Spiritist Studies Camille Flammarion here in Brussels. Thank you for joining us for our talk this evening, in which we will reflect upon one of the basics of the Spiritist philosophy, the continuity of life, the immortality of our soul. So in the light of the Spiritist teachings, we will consider several questions that are related to the moment when our soul actually leaves the material body that we inhabit, the moment that we call death. So what happens from a spiritual point of view? And is there anything we can do for our loved ones, for example, who are going through that moment? And in order to exchange on this really complex topic, I have invited a dear friend today, very well known to many of you. And I now have the pleasure to welcome Patrick. Patrick, how
Hello,
are you?
Karin.
Hello.
I'm doing very well. I really would like to thank you for the opportunity. It's really a nice moment and a very beautiful topic to discuss. And I'm really glad to be able to do that with you today.
Indeed, and I'm the one who thanks you, because it's really a topic that merits an exchange, because it's so rich, and so very happy that you joined us. And as always, we begin our activities with a short prayer. Would you like to do it today?
Yeah, I can do it. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
perfect.
Thank you.
So I would ask everyone to close their eyes for some seconds. Relax your shoulder, all the tension from the day, and elevate our thoughts to God, asking God to have today a beautiful talk with such beautiful topic to discuss that is so important to us. And also ask that the people that are suffering today, the ones that lost some beloved ones, can also reach this talk, this conversation, and that brings peace to their heart. Thank you very much, the Spirituality from NECAFLA, for this opportunity. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Patrick.
Thank you.
So starting on the topic, when we talk about the continuation of life, or the continuation of life after life, if you wish to say it that way, it's of course not a new concept, because already the ancient religions and philosophies have taught this concept, and so does Spiritism. And we would like to take this fact, the continuity of life, as a starting point. And on the basis of the Spiritist teachings, we would like to focus on a part of our life, or on that part of our life that can cause so much pain and fear still. So very often death is seen as the end of things, isn't it? But at the same time, many people, be they spiritists or believe in something different, many people believe in the existence of a soul, in the survival of the soul after death. So let's take a closer look of what actually happens to the soul. Science proved already that nothing ends. Nothing in nature ends, because everything undergoes a process of transformation. And the spirit, the high order spirit of Joanna de Angelis, she put it in those words. She said that, why would then we end after physical death when everything else changes from one form into another? And I would just like to share my screen with you to show you a sentence that is attributed to Allan Kardec, which summarizes the teachings of the Spiritist philosophy in a very beautiful way. It says, to be born, to die, to be reborn yet again, and constantly progress. That is the law. And this can really be taken as a summary of the Spiritist teachings and taking it from there, we would like to have a closer look at what the Spiritist philosophy actually teaches us. Patrick, would you like to continue on that?
Of course. So it's very important that we start with a fundamental question. In the Spirit book, there is a very well-known question that is the 115, where Allan Kardec asks, are some spirits made good and others made it bad? And the answer was very clear, like God created all the spirits simple and ignorance. And as a result of that, there is just one objective. The objective for us is to reach perfection. So this is a very important topic that we have to keep in mind. And to reach this perfection is the same way that we study at school, do a lot of exercising. So this is through the process of learning. And with a lot of learning, it comes the evolution. Of course, like to have a lot of learnings, so what we have to do is in numerous incarnations. So we're gonna incarnate 10, 20, 30, 40 times. And every time we're gonna improve a little bit. Okay, so after a lot of incarnations, we can reach the perfection. And have this in mind, so we can see as being here in the physical world, we have to see as a school. And that means that we are constantly learning. And as consequence of that, we have to realize that our real life is in the spirit world. So that is our real life. And from time to time, um, we come here for learning. There is a lot of videos we have in our channels, a lot of videos about like explain like what happens during incarnate. You have your material body, you have your soul. That for us at the Spiritism we say that it's a spirit when it's incarnated. You have the perispirit. So there is a lot of things that we can touch, but today we are going to touch a little bit more about yeah why we have to these multiple incarnations, and it's very important because if you see that if you come here with a specific goal, uh, you have to learn something, you have to fix a debt, you have to reconciliate with someone. That means that the incarnations are generally very carefully prepared. So it's not something like, okay, I will incarnate tomorrow and come to Earth, to the physical world. No, it's not like that. It's really something that they have a lot of thoughts about. And of course, we are here to learn how to love. So that's the goal of our reaching of perfection. Something that is easy to say, but it's very hard to do sometimes. And at certain moments, of course, the incarnation ends, and then it comes the moment where we have to go back to our spiritual home. We have to go back to our spirit family. And there is a very interesting part that we can discuss about that. Um, that it's in the book Nosso. This is the book in how it's called in Portuguese. But in English you can find as Astro City. Okay, the new edition is it says Nosso, but you can find as Astro City. And there is a very very beautiful chapter in the end of the book that is about the reincarnation of Mrs. Laura. Okay, Mrs. Laura helped a lot André Luis. She teach a lot to him, but we noticed that at the moment that she's preparing to reincarnate, some of the same feelings that we have as we are going back to our spirit world, she also had. So, for example, 2 days before, She returned to the physical world. She had friends, even like representatives of the administration of the colony, going there to see her in a kind of a way to say goodbye. Hmm? It's also important to say that she was kind of a little bit frustrated. She was a little bit worried. What will happen? I have a goal. Will I reach this goal? And this is something that we, when we are approaching the time to go back to the spirit world, or someone that we love return it to the spirit world, we also have these concerns. But we have here like some examples how we can think about that. In the end, both from the spiritual world to the physical world and the opposite, what we are doing is just a temporary saying goodbye. And that's something that we have really to keep in mind. It's just a, yeah, momently we will not see each other. Maybe we think that we will not hear each other, but we'll discuss a little bit later in the talk that this is not completely true. And we're going to talk about that. But like, maybe I would like to ask also Karin, because Karin, the same way that we have for yeah, for the case of the Mrs. Laura's coming back to Earth and to the physical world. So, sorry, we had also some case of people going back to the spirit world. So yeah, how can you talk about this inverted picture?
Absolutely, yeah. And thank you for mentioning this very beautiful example of the preparations of the reincarnation of Mrs. Laura. That's really beautiful to see from that point of view, because it usually it reminds us of a situation where we would have to say goodbye here on Earth. It's just really, as you said, inverting the picture. So someone leaves in order to begin a new incarnation, but knowing that this is just for a limited period of time and at some stage. It's like you're going on a journey, right? You know that what you're preparing for, but you also know that this journey at some stage will come to an end, and that then we need to return, or we will return to the spiritual world, which is actually our real home, as we are all eternal or immortal spirits. So if we're here, so if we're taking now the standpoint or the point of view that we're here on Earth, incarnate, we do have our families, our friends, our colleagues, all the everything around in our daily life. But at some stage, one day, we will have to leave them behind. So that's something natural, and we all, if we want or not, this is something that we know. All of us will have to face this one day. All of us will have to say goodbye one day when our moment comes and our incarnation comes to an end. And one very important aspect, which may cause a lot of fear, is the actual moment of discarnation itself, because it's not very well known in detail what actually happens to the soul, what happens from a spiritual point of view. We know the biological processes that happen, but what actually happens to the soul? Are we left on our own? Do we know what to do? So what really happens? And the Spiritist literature helps us with many different examples that we find in many books. So first of all, we find the basic information in the basic books of the Spiritist teachings, but also there's additional literature, like the two books that we put here on the slide, which the two of them are part of a series called Life in the Spirit World, by the Spirit, written by the Spirit, André Louis, who after returning, after he himself had returned to the spiritual world, actually describes to us, who are left here on Earth, what he encounters in the spiritual world. So he describes actually the moment of his own awakening and what happened next. And through the mediumship of Chico Xavier, he writes several books and really describes many different aspects of life in the spiritual world, and also the relations between the spiritual world and life here on Earth. And these books are so rich, every single one of them. it's really worth studying them in depth because we learn so much. They seem, on the first view, they may seem as some romance if you don't really look into what's in there, but there's so much of rich information and scientific information as well that describes all these aspects, and also the moment of discarnation, when the soul actually leaves the body. We learn, for example, in this book, which is called Workers of the Life Eternal, we get to know a man called Dimas, and who has actually reached the end of his incarnation. He has reached a certain age, and the moment for him to return to the spiritual world has come. And this moment is described under many different aspects by André Louis. He has really the chance to follow this discarnation closer. And one of the very important aspects that we learn is that we are, at that moment, we are not alone, seen from the spiritual point of view as well. So there are, first of all, there are specialists that help us to disconnect, that help to disconnect the soul and also the spiritual body from our material body. Just as there are specialists who help before we incarnate, the other way around. There are specialists that also help connecting a spirit that is to reincarnate, to connect to the body that is to be formed, the new body that is developing out of this zygote, the egg cell. And it's very beautiful to see all the dedication by the spirits who help Dimas to free himself from his material body. And also, apart from the technical support, he also has a very strong emotional support by his mom, who had left to the spiritual realms before him, long before. And when he realizes that really his moment of returning home to the spiritual world has come, he starts to pray, and then he thinks back to his life and thinks of his mom, and asks for support, and she actually comes in order to be with him, and she remains by his side until he really manages to disconnect from his body. And it's very beautiful to see this description, and also very consoling, I think. We are really not alone at that moment, and especially now during the pandemic, I think it's important to know that, because many of those who passed away during that time, especially in hospitals, many of them did not have the chance to have their incarnate family by their side. And for many, it was really difficult to see or to know that their loved ones have passed away without the presence of any family member in the hospital, for example. But at least we know from the spiritual side, seen from the spiritual point of view, they were not alone. They received a lot of support. And one aspect that summarizes our difficult relationship with death that we still, or most of us still have, is addressed by Allan Kardec in the book Heaven and Hell, which is one of the basic books of the Spiritist teachings, where he writes about the fear of death that we have as human beings. And he says, as long as death is something unknown, it is normal that we fear it, because we do not really know what happens. We have our instinct of self-conservation, but the Spiritist teachings really explain us very well all the details that are connected to it, and the mechanism itself, but also the way that we as immortal souls continue in the spiritual world. And there are also many examples of spirits who communicate and explain their situation in the spiritual world in the book Heaven and Hell. So in the second part, you find many practical examples of spirits who describe what situation they are in right now. And I think that through that study, through studying the Spiritist teachings and also the additional literature, death becomes less and less unknown to us. So then we begin to see it as something natural, and indeed studying really this rich body of knowledge, the Spiritist teachings, helps us, or can help us, to overcome this fear that we have of death. But now I think I've talked a lot. Perhaps you would like to continue, Patrick, and give your points of view.
So if you go to the next slide, it's a
Okay.
very beautiful um, description from Joana de Angelis, where she says, to die is to change one's vibratory condition, but death in itself will not change your emotional reality. And that is very beautiful because this is something that we are all think about. And in reality, when you die, nothing will change drastically. It doesn't mean that because you disincarnate, your emotions, the way that you think will change. And then it comes to our mind, how our situation will be after death. And basically, we will depend on how we live here. It's always a consequence of how you are living here. If we sincerely try to overcome our difficulties, tendencies, and we try to do good, we try to love our next person, to love our brothers, we don't need to worry about that because it's just a continuation. It's like we said before, it's just the continuation of the school. You are primary, you every day you are a little bit better. Every incarnation you are a little bit better. Of course, this is not the same situation as if you don't have these mentality. In the end, it's very important to say that it doesn't mean that someone will be there in the other side to say you did bad, now something will happen. It's not like that. It's just for you as a spirit, you will probably not experience much peace, and that's very important. Like you will realize, yeah, I didn't um, did what I was supposed to do. I didn't try to overcome my difficulties. So in the end, it's just inside yourself. You will not experience a beautiful peace. And this is a reflection of the things that we know that is not perfect and it's not good. If we are attached to matter, if we just worry about material things, if we are concerned about, yeah, who will take the money when I die, if I am a person that has a lot of hate, if I have a lot of jealous, these are feelings that we are sure that will not bring you peace when you disincarnate. That's why it's very important to have in mind the fraternal love. So this is something really, really important. And each day, we don't need to change it from one day to the other, but each day we have to try to become a little bit better than yesterday. It's a kind of cliche, but we know that this is the only um, solution that we have for this problem. And then it comes a very important question. Then I think Karin can explain very well. That is, it's related to how we consider how to do we consider death when we are the ones who stay here, because that's a very sensitive situation. We always love someone that we lost, someone that we love. Yeah, but yeah, how we consider death in that scenario.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and also for students of the Spiritist teachings, I think one side is the theoretical study, and then when we are in that situation that one of our loved ones will return to the spiritual world, I think it's still very difficult. And how often do we use this expression? I lost my whomever, no? So I lost someone. But do we really lose anyone? And again, the Spiritist teachings are very helpful at that moment and really consoling. although of course it is a painful moment, even if we study and even if you are convinced that our soul continues to exist and at some stage we will meet our loved ones again, it is a painful moment. That's completely human and normal, and we miss these loved ones. They're not here by our side anymore, at least not in the same way that we used to have them here. While our pathway here continues still until our moment comes to return. So let's consider the spiritual perspective of that situation. So if someone passes away to the spiritual world, their trial here on earth has ended. So the time that was meant for them to be here has ended, and they will then continue their pathway in the spiritual world. And when our moment comes one day, and also depending on the circumstances, we will eventually meet our loved ones again in the spiritual world. And this is something that the Spiritist teachings show us, which I find very, very consoling, and which is something that we should always continue to study and keep in mind to be prepared if we can be prepared for such a moment. And at the moment of death or of someone passing to the spiritual realms, it is also important that we help these loved ones with our thoughts and with our vibrations, because one aspect that we also learn in the book Workers of the Life Eternal that we showed you before, when Dimas prepares to return to the spiritual world, is actually how do the thoughts and feelings of his loved ones affect him at this moment. And Louise describes in a very detailed way how his wife is suffering with that situation. So Dimas has been sick for a while already, and it was in a very critical state already, and his organs have nearly ceased to function. But still, as it is very humane, she has been by his side for many, many days and nights, and really had this loving his loving thoughts and vibrations, but in a way that she wanted to keep him here. She didn't want to let him go. And André Louis describes actually what happens on an energetical level. And he describes that her thoughts and vibrations create strings, energetical strings that create a sort of net. And he says, really, Dimas looks like a fish in the net that is caused by those vibrations of trying to hold him back. So and actually they do have an effect, because he's not able to liberate himself from his material body, although his moment had come. And André Louis describes to us that the spiritual benefactors had actually to help in order to overcome this situation. And what they did was they made him recover apparently for a few moments. So really he seemed to be better. And everyone was relieved. His family was relieved. The doctor was called and said, really, it seems that he's getting better. And then Dimas himself recommended to his wife to take some rest and relax, because he was feeling better. And actually everyone leaves the room. And only then the vibrations in the room change. And the spiritual specialists who are there to help him discarnate can go on and help him to actually liberate himself. And when I read that for the first time, I was very, very surprised, because I had not thought about that possibility, that by these natural thoughts that we have to hold on to someone in such a situation, we're not really helping them. It is a completely humane and natural feeling, but it's something that merits to be studied, and so we can eventually change our way of thinking about that situation and try to help our loved ones at that moment. Because we know, actually, when we consider it from the spiritual point of view, or if we take the overall picture where we see this immortal spirit that has to reincarnate many, many times, as you said, Patrick, in the beginning, has reached the end of one of those many incarnations and will now return to the spiritual home. And especially if someone is in such a situation where he's sick and his body is really, really weak, he will then most probably feel much, much better in the spiritual world and can then continue his pathway. So actually, it's something positive for that spirit. And if we are able to see it from that point of view, it may be easier for us to also think in a different way in such a situation. So instead of trying to hold our loved ones back, we can try to help them with loving thoughts. For example, if you do not have the habit of praying, but still sending some positive thoughts and trusting life, or if you do have the habit of prayer, that's very, very helpful. How we can help them and really ask for blessings and help for them, so they may continue their pathway in peace as well. So it's really worth reading this book, and especially those chapters that in the book Workers of the Life Eternal that describe the moment of discarnation of Demas, to understand that process better, because I found that really, really helpful to read it and study it. And yeah, there are many aspects described in that book. Also, how our thoughts and conversations influence someone who has just returned to the spiritual world, for example. But maybe I will stop talking now and and leave that field to you, Patrick.
Yeah, it's a very important topic to realize, because, as you said, a lot of us sometimes say, "I lost my dad, I lost my mom, my brother," but in the end, it's like we said at the beginning, it's just a temporary goodbye. uh, and as we said, yeah, we may think that there is no way to discuss about that, or to talk about it with them, but in reality there is a way, and this way is well described um, by Joanna, once again, and she says very beautiful. Think with serenity and joy in your heart of your loved ones who have departed from the physical body. Do not torment yourself imagining all the things you could have done for them, or of all the words you could have said to them. Love them tenderly. Think of them knowing that they hear you, they see you, and they partake of your joy and your concerns. And that is a very beautiful part, because like, maybe you don't pray, but you could in reality just try to, the same way we start today, to cool down your mind, and this is the moment that you can easily talk with them, send your best thoughts. So it's very important, as Karin said, that we always keep the good thoughts, the best thoughts of someone that we lost, instead of thinking like, yeah, normally she or he used to do that and I didn't like. Let's think about the opportunities that we were together, beautiful things that we said one to the other, and it's really like the joy um, in your heart. Of course, we came to, with these type of discussions, we came to a very delicate subject, that sometimes you want to ask for forgiveness, but this person already left, temporarily left. Um, so sometimes you say, I can never say sorry anymore for this person, or I would like to ask for forgiveness, but in reality we can. In the same way with our meditation, the prayer that I just said, this is a beautiful way and a very nice way to try to talk with them. And in reality, it works really well. It really works really well. There is in our channel also a beautiful presentation done by Joaquin, where he explains a guide for forgiving. And this is something that, take in consideration the situations, how people feel when something happens. This is something that we should try to do more. Forgive before it's too late. We don't know if in 2 days or 1 week we're gonna be here. Life has its ways of happens. So it's very important that we are always with our hearts clean, always with our hearts without hate. Forgive everyone, and if we are in a situation that was not possible, and take in consideration what is happening with our beautiful planet right now, a lot of people disincarnated. We don't have time to say goodbye or to say I'm sorry. Um, so we could just try to play for these people. Pray with your, all the love of your heart. And we are quite sure, seeing like the books that we've been reading, like the ones that we are talking today, that this person will be next to you. And it's a very beautiful beautiful moment that could happen. Of course, it's always nice that if you know about that and you ask for forgiveness, yeah, but we should try also to not repeat the same mistake. So this, I think, it's from this part. It's something really important that we could keep in mind. Always ask for forgiveness. Love everyone. Have no hate in your heart. Jealous, all these bad feelings. And this will have this communication with the spirit world, this feeling of love. It will be constantly. And this is something very important, because I think Karen will talk also about that. This is yeah, it's about more about like God's will, Karen.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I was just reflecting about what you said. It's very beautiful to remember that we will actually stay in touch, and that someday all of us will leave, and we never know when. Yeah, but when it happens that someone has to leave, or well, someone's incarnation comes to an end, then it's also important to learn that we accept that fact and accept God's will, accept life's ways, and everything that happens, because we cannot change it. So as also Joanna de Angelis says in that same book that you just quoted, we can always ask God to bless those who have left, and even if they were the ones who may have caused some trouble to us, I think it's also nice if we can then just send some peaceful thoughts out to them and let them know it's fine, don't worry about it. Because just let's imagine if we were on their side and thinking, oh my God, now I'm not on earth anymore, and I cannot talk to that person, I cannot ask for forgiveness or reconcile. But through our thoughts, we can just make peace with that, and we will feel much more in peace as well in such a situation. And as we mentioned the books of André Louis earlier to you, I would also like to take this opportunity, or we would actually like to do that, and to honor someone very special today. You can see his picture here, and most of you know him very well, Chico Xavier. Why do we do it today? In the context of this talk, obviously, but also because tomorrow, on the 30th of June, it will be 19 years that he himself returned to the spiritual world after his last incarnation. For those of you who do not know him yet, he was born in 1910 in Brazil on the 2nd of April. And as I just said, he returned to the spiritual world in 2002 on the 30th of June. And in between that span of time, he has done so much for all of us. He was an extraordinary medium, really an extraordinary one, who was active through his mediumship for nearly 75 years on a daily level, and through that really contributed in such a way, as we say here, he immensely contributed to our understanding of life in the spiritual world, but also to the relations between the material world and the spiritual world. And he, through his mediumship, received more than 400 books by several spirits who communicated through him and described so many details of life in the spiritual world, of how our actions influence our fate in the spiritual world, and vice versa. They can really learn so much. So the series of books by André Luiz is just one example, and there's so many more. More than, I think, 412 books were published while he was alive, and then many more who had already been prepared but who had not been published during his lifetime. And besides that, he also received really innumerous messages by discarnate spirits in the normal mediumistic sessions of the Spiritist group where he was active. And very often these were communications by spirits who had passed away at a very young age, for example. So many young people. And through his mediumship, they were able to write to their parents and tell them about their fate in the spiritual world. Tell them, don't worry, I'm doing fine. And actually, there was a meaning behind me having to return, for example, through a car accident or some other situation very, very early. But I was received by granny, by some auntie, and this and that happened. And usually those messages contained details that could not be known to Chico Xavier. So really also proving the authenticity to the parents, because there were situations mentioned in details that only the parents could know, or something like that. So that was really, really impressive. And many of those messages had also been studied. So to really find out if that information is really can really be proven, and that was always the case. So he, besides consoling so many people through these messages that he served as a medium for, he also gave proof of life, or of the continuation of life, in a very beautiful way. And besides all that, all those books and messages and texts that he received through his mediumship, he also gave such a beautiful example, because he lived what the Spiritist teachings show us, or what they teach us, actually. So he was such a beautiful example of this fraternal love through all his dedication towards others, and also of humility. So such a very, very special spirit of light that has done so much for all of us. And he was known not only all over Brazil, but also in many other countries. And we would like to take this opportunity to really express our sincere gratitude for everything that he has done for all of us. And I'm sure that he continues doing, and I'm sure he continues very busy in the spiritual world. But well, we could continue talking about Chico Xavier, and I would never do him justice, so I will better stop here.
That's true. It was a phenomenal incarnation that he had. Not just because, as you said, by his books, but also for the way that he was, showing himself. I mean, like how he treat people, how he was so careful with everything, with animals. It was a very, very beautiful example.
Absolutely. Okay, then I think we have reached the end of our talk, and I would really like to thank you, Patrick, for joining and enriching this talk today in such a beautiful way.
No, it
It's
was my
really a pleasure.
pleasure. I thank you.
Thank you, and I see you also had a few of our dear friends joining us.
Yeah, we had
And
some friends join us, like
yeah,
Daniel, Fabio. We appreciate the everyone that connected the time to watch the presentation. That was very beautiful. Yeah.
yeah, thank you so much, everyone. And perhaps if I go to the next slide. Oh, and Elisa has also joined us. Hi,
Yeah.
Elisa. I just, now it worked. If you would perhaps like to say a few words on our activities or on the upcoming ones.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
So like all the details about our active can be found at the website. As always, we have like the French and the English talks in the Tuesday, one time English, one time French, and Portuguese presentations once a month. But it's very important that now we are able to go back to healing sessions. So once a week, it will be possible to have healing sessions. We need to make an appointment, and this is done via the website. So if you are interested on that, initially we have the healing sessions in Portuguese. But if you speak only English and would like to have a session, also send a message to us. We're gonna try to arrange something like that. And of course, like the fraternal conversations, we still have in all possible language that we speak here in Belgium. So if you want to have a talk um, in English, just go to the website, send us a message, and we'll try to have an appointment and discuss, talk, even if it's about this important topic that we cover today. But we are at the website necafla.be, open for helping people, and I think that's it, huh?
That's it. Yeah. Thank you so much, Patrick, and thanks to everyone who has joined us this evening. Thanks for your attention, and let's then take this moment and also thank with our short prayer. So once again, let's continue in those vibrations of peace, reflecting perhaps a bit more about our natures as immortal spirits and the immortality of our soul. And let's thank God for the opportunity of studying these teachings that explain us so much about the fundamental questions of life, and also who consoled us at all the difficult moments that we may face. I'd like to thank the mentors of our group, Nekafla. I'd like to thank all of you who have joined us, and especially Patrick for joining me in that talk and sharing this very rich content. And may this vibration of peace spread as far as possible and reach all those hearts who may be suffering at this moment. May they bring a bit of consolation and hope. So be it.
So be it. Thank you very much, Karin, and I hope to see you soon also.
Thank you very much to you, Patrick. Yeah. See you soon again.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay. So then goodbye, everyone. And next week we'll be back with a French-speaking talk. Not the two of us, but
Yeah.
no one else. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much,
Take
everybody.
care.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.